Hello creative people, welcome back to the channel and to my old studio. I'm not in the new studio yet. If you haven't checked out the last video I uploaded, you can go check it out and take a little tour of the garden shed that's going to become my new studio. Currently I'm still just in my home that is just sectioned off, and I've got curtains up for a little bit of privacy studio feeling space. So you are going to hear some birds in the background, possibly the dog running around in the background. They're usually both really good. But no 2-year-old running around in the background because she's spending the weekend with her grandparents. Everybody's very happy with that scenario, including myself. And I'm stoked to be able to get some painting done, some videos done, because those are just the hardest thing currently with my studio being in home, is that it is really hard to get the time and quiet space to be able to record and chat with you guys. So my goal today, as I'm doing that, is actually to do some real-time painting. And it's because, myself included, it's hard to watch time lapse, which I will do more of in the future, because it's still good unless you're going to sit there for 6 hours or so, which is the shortest painting session that I've had to be able to do a painting from start to finish. Now granted, that was a geometric painting, and that was drawing, composition, all of that from beginning to end. I know some people paint faster. I don't think I'm the fastest painter, but I know I'm not the slowest painter either. And so part of it really does depend on what you are painting and how many, shall I say, visual tricks per se you can achieve with your brush to still achieve the look that you're wanting. With these geometric paintings that I've been doing, especially, I'll let you see that, or with like hyper realistic paintings, when you see clips of people doing like the little brush strokes and like hairs and then zoom out and you see how big that painting is. Painting takes a while. It is a craft that takes a long time. There's one artist who I really like. She does gorgeous dot work, and she does her stuff in like, I think she said about 3 months. And in that 3 months, she does 12-hour days at this painting, at 10-hour days, to achieve what she wants to achieve with this dot work. And that's because in some things there's no cheat. There is no way. If you see all these little dots on a painting, the artist didn't cheat that, unless it's splatter, which is, again, it's not a cheat, that's an effect. But some things are just painted meticulously, painfully, by hand, and that takes a while. So I want to be able to show you guys that today in real time. We're not going to get this painting done. I will have pictures of it later. I will show you instead. Take a little jaunt here with me. See all of my stuff set up there, and the brushes that I have forever and always want more brushes. Here we go. Here's the painting in question. This is another geometric design that already has the values on it. I want the values to be greater, so I will go back in with another layer on this and increase the effect. I'm also playing around with potentially adding some color to it, but I want to get a couple of them done first so I can gauge their impact all together and then go from there. The other thing I will show you real quick, and don't mind this is what happens when you've got a toddler and they're rough and use all their little toddler strength to pull something out with your face directly in the path of the thing that they're trying to pull out. She said sorry, she felt very bad. All right, there is the palette. Give you an idea of what we're working here with today. Ignore those colors, those are a different project. Yellow ochre, burnt umber, burnt sienna, with 5 values of each. That's just what I chose to start with for each of the paintings. It felt like enough values that I could tinker in each section, the range, so it wasn't too few, but I didn't get carried away with mixing all my values either, because from these values you can create more values, and as the painting shapes up, that's how that goes. So let's do this. I'm gonna try to do it without pretty much any cuts, other than I'm gonna cut this right here so that you can stop looking at my face and you can check out the painting we're gonna work on. All right, let's try this. All right, here we go. Oh, the first brush that I'm using, and I'll just talk to you about it because this is part of picking something before you start painting. I think this is actually a really cheap brush. I have some nice brushes that I use for specific things. This is a 0 round, but the nice thing with oils is that even though you can see The hairs are kind of frayed on him and he's looking a little rough because I'm not very gentle with him. Oil paints are so thick that essentially they're going to hold those bristles together and it's going to be good. I have a little area in the burnt umber section, which as you can see in acrylics, this is how they came out. In oils, the pigment's a little different. Pigments also change depending on brand. I'm lucky I snagged some Gamblin oils. I think they were on sale. So art supplies, if you're just getting started, don't fret too much over needing to have the nicest art supplies. It's really nice when you know how to use it and you come to appreciate it. But when you're first starting off, you don't have to go for the nicest because honestly, the difference, you're not going to understand it. And it's not a matter of waste. I know some people are like, oh, it's wasteful. It's not. I mean, it kind of, but I feel like that has a negative connotation. And it's more so, it's not that you're not worthy of the nicer things. It's just that you're going to use them and you're not going to know how to use them. And so you might get frustrated or you're going to be like, why isn't that coming out? I understand this doesn't seem any better than the other stuff that I was using, except for the price tags. Well, you're not using it maybe necessarily the way it has to be used. Okay, get off your soapbox. You know, you don't, just ignore that. I'm keeping it in though. You know what? I'm keeping it in because I'm just trying to show you. Real time, this is what I do. Normally I listen to podcasts. And also, okay, before I close that thought branch out, I do want to close it out so I don't keep thinking about it. What I do want to say is just get into what you can get to for your affordability. If you can afford what are considered student grade or better and not hobby, I do recommend that. I will say there is a big difference between that and hobby paints. And it is tangible from the beginning. Hobby paints are still super useful though. If that is your budget, that is your budget right now. I used to paint figurines with hobby paints. And honestly, for me at the time, they worked just fine. They really did. So always just be creative. But then if you ever get the budget, don't feel, this is the one I struggle with, don't feel guilty if you can upgrade. Especially when you get to a certain skill level there. Okay, that's enough. That's enough of me going down that tangential route. If you would like a video on recommending different paints and brands at different price points, let me know in the comments and I will put something together because I have used a whole bunch. I have had a variety of things over time available at my disposal. And so I've used a variety. I am just wiping my brush off with this. So that's something else that I've adopted just currently in my practice. I'm in the process of switching from acrylics to oils. I still like my acrylics and I'm going to keep using them for various projects, but I have reached a place where I'm switching to oils. And I think that's why I'm kind of talking about materials and such, is because that's where I'm at, is I'm very transitionary right now. I'm so happy I started in acrylics. Honestly and truly, there can be a transition and there's probably an argument to be made for, I don't know, for starting with oils and not having like bad habits from acrylics or something of that nature. However, I would like to argue that oils are expensive. And so trying to just do oils is going to be a rough place to start out, and acrylics have worked great for me to learn the patience and stylistic compositions to get where I want to go. And so I like my acrylics still, but I am getting to a place where for me oils are achieving more of the result that I want. They have more of an impact to me visually for what I want to achieve. So that's what I'm trying to navigate without sounding like it's the only way. I don't think any single material is the only way to achieve a certain thing. I just think you come to it at different times. That's all. Right now I'm putting in these teeny tiny little dots that are in the pattern that are kind of there. So this part, as you can see, when you have the little teeny dots in there, that doesn't take that long. If you're wondering how long it takes to create this type of a pattern, maybe that'll be the next video if I've got a lot of gumption, because I got the weekend to try to do that. So that was a little bit of burnt umber. You can see I have a contrasting pattern going on here. So anywhere that there's the burnt sienna, I'm putting kind of burnt umber next to it and vice versa. And then yellow is kind of one of my static points. I promise we'll do something here in a second that's a little more impactful. This is a lot of what a painting is, by the way, so that you know, because that's what I was saying with, I think they get really sensationalized. People are like, an artist just like whip them out, and we feel like that's the thing to aspire to. And I am trying to find more speed in my own practice and starting to kind of do some one and done, sitting down and just doing oils in one sitting. But in general, also depends on how far you want to push that composition, how detailed it is, how finicky and intrinsic. And this is just currently blocking in colors. This isn't even, all of these are going to need another pass to add in a little more stuff, which I could do, I suppose, in one shot. Like I could have taken my time and just done this and got this section perfect and then moved on to the next section. Visually, I like to block it all in, and that's how I've seen other artists do it as well, is to block in all of your values. So first I designed the shape, and then I blocked in the colors that I wanted, and now I'm going through and I'm blocking in the values. And I'm sure if you could mentally plan that out more than me, you might do better and just do it all in one. But this is how I do it. So I'm taking the opposite color here is what I'm doing, which is why I've really fallen in love with some of these geometric puzzles. And don't worry if you've been around, you're like, is she gonna do the flowy stuff anymore? Oh, absolutely. I've got, essentially, I've figured out like two sides of my brain going on here. And yes, I know everybody has two sides of a brain, whatever. I'm not. How much justifying do I have to do? I don't know. So I'm just gonna speak for me. And if you feel the same way, that's awesome. And comment and let me know, and we can have a conversation. But I'm not gonna walk on eggshells. And at this point, I'm convincing myself more of that than you. So just don't mind me here for a second as I block this in and totally schmooge into that section, which, again, I wish I could say that's a fluke. I'm always, no, I do, and then I have to fix it. This is also what I appreciate about oils, is they flow a little more right there. It's definitely not the most charismatic video that I've done. This is probably one I will watch once to edit and then never look at again. Like, that was not good. Okay. So what I was trying to explain and talk and paint at the same time, which is honestly harder than you think. I think that's why most artists listen to podcasts, because you need something to occupy a certain part of your brain, especially once you've composed. Like composition, personally, I listen to music, and so that I can kind of get into this like flowy state of thinking it through and vibing with what's going on the canvas. But the thing that I think you don't hear a lot of artists talk about, so that's the really fun part, and that happens at the beginning. And sometimes that, you know, if it's a one and done, that may be all she wrote right there. You're good to go. And those are fun. What I found with these a little more geometric puzzles is that you compose it, I figure out the shapes and such, and I don't know if I finished that sentence from earlier, but I plan on doing a video showing you kind of how I did that. It's really just, it's making a bunch of lines and then you deciding on the lines. There, I spoiled it for you. There's no great secret. And you're like, Shania doesn't actually explain anything. Well, I mean, it does. It doesn't, I suppose. Well, hence video. Is that video going to be another one of you just rambling nonsensically? I don't know. I don't know. But point being, to finish this thought, I swear to goodness I'm going to finish this thought, is that at some point after the composing, and this was a thing that actually does date back, by the way, if you would like some, it needs to be real from a time that we respected. Okay, so back during the Renaissance, some of the greatest painters, there was a thing that, because you don't want to think too much about your painting once you're painting it, after you've composed it, after you've blocked it all in, it's so easy to overthink it and get wrapped up in it. And yeah, you need to assess it and step back and look at it and like make sure you're going in the right direction, blah, blah, blah. But if you're just sitting here painting for literal hours, I looked in another modern painter who does beautiful giant dot work designs and just gorgeous. Well, when she is doing a painting for, I think she said like 3 months, she has like 10-hour days at the easel. So after the composing part, this part, which yes, it's still fun on some level, at least to me. It is enjoyable, I guess I should say. It's not a bad task, but it is work. It is just bringing that idea to life, and that's where skill and patience and dedication comes in. And also right now, if you're like, she's just fiddling around with this brush, I'm trying to not screw up my edges. And again, this is where I'm like, another painter, perhaps a more skilled painter, might be able to just pick a larger brush, and I will get larger as we go out. You use the brush that you're comfortable with. And I've also noticed too, I allow myself to warm up. And if I need to start careful, then I start careful like this with this tiny little brush. And as I feel more confident and warmed up into my painting, then I get a little more cavalier, a little more free-flowing with the brush, and I'm able to just go for it with a larger brush. But I'm always a little timid when I start out. It's kind of like, I don't know if you ever do this when you go ice skating or something like that. Even to this day, and probably not so smart these days because I could probably hurt myself at this point. I was more resilient, as we all are, when I was younger. The first thing I would do when we'd go ice skating, I'd get on the ice, I'd kind of test out my skates a little bit, make sure I had a feel for it, and then I would purposefully make myself fall. In a safe manner, not like a bad spill or in front of anybody else, endangering anyone, but I would allow myself to fall. Just to remind myself in that moment, because what is it, you get on the ice, what are you scared of? Well, you're scared of falling. You don't want to fall. So I just remind myself in that moment after falling, I'm like, oh, well, that didn't hurt as bad as I thought it would. Like, you just basically, your brain's like, oh, I think it hurts so much, it could hurt, it blah, blah. And then if you just kind of let go of that and let yourself do that, you're like, oh, well, if I do fall, it doesn't hurt that bad, so I don't have to be that scared of it. I can just enjoy. That's at least what I do. So for this part right here is where I would listen not to music, because I'm going to think too much about it. And you get in your head or you overthink thoughts, and then you're not really paying attention as much to your lines. And this is the important execution part where you're like, okay, this is just, you're just doing lines. Your job is just to fill in lines. What is your purpose? You serve butter. If you get that reference, kudos. Has anybody got a good podcast they can recommend? I've been jumping all over lately trying to figure out what in the world I want to listen to. I'm gonna admit, because I know for some people it's like, what is that? Or some people are like, I don't like him, that person sucks. Anyway, I've binged Harmontown, loved it. I really enjoyed that, by the way. My Favorite Murder is one I'm coming back to. It's one called Small Town Dicks, which is actually pretty good. And so I like true crime, but I don't know. I keep bouncing back and forth between I don't want something so frivolous necessarily, and I don't know how to define frivolous, and that's... So what do you want to listen to, Sinead? I don't know. That's what I'm saying, I guess. What are your favorite podcasts? Really good ones, like ones that don't make... I'm not trying to... Sometimes I am. Sometimes I get into really... I didn't finish any of those thoughts. Okay. I'm not trying... Sometimes I'm not trying to get into like something that's too heavy. Does that make sense? But I'm in a weird place where I'm like, I don't necessarily want to like break my brain trying to listen to that, because also like if it's like a text, you know what I'm thinking of, like it's like a textbook that you'd really like want to listen to and study. That one's a little harder. I've enjoyed I've enjoyed biographies of like different artists. There was a George O'Keeffe biography. That one was fantastic. Really, really enjoyed that. Got to see an exhibit by her. There was one on Leonardo I really enjoyed. I tried one on Michelangelo, did not, no. It was, I should finish it, maybe. I got 3/4 of the way through that book, I think. The author was very, very long-winded, and it was like, it was interesting, but only, to be fair, like to a point. Oh, something else I'm doing here as I'm rambling to you and turning it around. That's why I'm rambling, because normally I don't have to use that much of my thought process while I'm painting to figure out coherent things. But I am working to the inside out, trying not to touch it, because the thing you should always tell yourself as you're painting with oils is the paint is wet, the paint is wet, the paint is wet, the paint is wet. Hey, is that paint still wet? It's still wet. Can I smudge it? Oh yeah, you can. You can smudge it and then get it on your hand, and you can smudge other parts of your painting because the paint is wet. Just sing yourself that little song over and over again. The paint is wet, the paint is wet, the paint is wet. I do have my own version of a mall stick, which is why I say I've had various price points available to me throughout my life. This is my current mall stick. It is a ruler with a nail put through it with duct tape so it doesn't hurt the thing. It does not always work the best, and I'm not saying it's great, but what I am saying is don't worry. Thank you, loud neighbors. Goodness. Don't worry if you're like, I can't buy a thing. Okay, make it. Make it from something really cheap. Just DIY it, because you're gonna want it, especially if you're doing oils, because the paint is wet. Did I mention the paint is wet? It is. You can smudge it, which is good and bad. So again, because like if I do this fast enough, then I can go in and still go over it, but I'm not sad if the layer dries. Okay. And so a thought that I don't think I finished from before is I'm not rinsing my brush in anything in between colors and different sizes. Now, when I get to the bigger brushes, I'm going to specifically use different brushes because it's a lot of paint. But when you're doing these tiny little detail brushes, what I have found is honestly, unless you're going to get super yellow, if you had a bright yellow, I would specifically pick a brush for yellow or a really like taintable color. But for these colors and for this size, honestly, if you just wipe it off really, really good, for the most part, you're good. You don't have to rinse it in mineral spirits and all of that, because here's the thing. It's not just like using the chemical, but it does change how your brush behaves. Also, right now, I'm using just oil paint. I'm not using any medium with my oil paint. I'm just using oil paint. And to capstone another thought that I definitely didn't finish, what I'm doing with the colors is opposite. So that painting that I showed you at the very beginning of the video, I went with your typical atmospheric perspective, which was that, you know, going into the thing, the further away something is, the less color is in it. So in the last painting, you saw like it was really light in the center and went out to dark, which is a more traditional perspective for depth. So for this one, I just wanted to play with the light against the dark. And so the yellow went light to dark, and I still have to block this in. My burnt umber and burnt sienna went from dark to light. But as I was looking at just this section of it, I was like, I really still want the impact of the dark out here somewhere. I don't want to lose all of that. And so this time I'm bringing on these kind of opposite petals from what I'm doing. This is dark to light, but then these two are going light to dark, and that's going to create a heavier impact in this section that I'm really excited to see. So I'm just going to block in some of these and try to get to a place where I feel like was possibly worth your time. I need to check the timestamp on the thing. I don't know how long I've been painting for. That's the thing. Painting too, I promise you, is a time warp. Because I have sat here and my partner's been like, do you want to come home for dinner? Come home is what we say when I'm at the studio. Or, yeah. So, would you like to come home for dinner? And I'm like, there's no way. It's dinner time. But it is. That's just because painting in general takes a lot longer than I think anyone gives it credit for. Seriously. It takes a while. It is a labor of a lot of patience, which is funny. Because my mom always said, as I was growing up, she kept saying patience, patience. And I was like, I don't want to have any patience. Until it was in the form and context of something that I felt I could not live without, which was painting and making puzzles, because painting can always be different. You can always pursue it, and that's why I said earlier, I was like, well, I saw it and I wanted to change it because this is a puzzle, and that's the first thing. So you make the shape, and then you decide from there the colors that go in the shape, and that really does change everything about it. When you start to add colors, and then you start to add values, and you change what the eye is doing as it's looking at the painting. And I think that's so cool. It's so cool. Like, just think about realist painters. How crazy is that you can look at something and be like, is that a real butterfly? Is that actually, like, is that right there? There was actually an artist, and terrible me, I don't know their name, so go look it up, that painted a painting. It was like of a bowl of fruit, so it was a still life, with a curtain in front of it to include, so a curtain over like part of it, you could see past it, like they were trying to create this kind of optical thing. But what was really cool about that is it also included this fly that was a realistic fly, and when you look at it, your brain really does go, is that fly come off of there? Like, is that a real fly? No, it's not a real fly. It's an exceptionally talented artist who had probably looked at enough flies to be able to realistically render one. Which, to be fair, they're not scarce. So I think I don't want to paint realism in general, if I'm being perfectly honest. Done portraits. Did a good job at portraits. Got a couple more portraits that need to get done as soon as the studio's up and running. And now I've come back to oils, which oils are the only thing I will do portraits in. I have no patience for portraits in acrylic. I think oil truly is the portrait medium. You are welcome to have a different opinion. I've seen amazing watercolor portraits and acrylic portraits. I just don't like to make them in those mediums personally. Which is why art is also a personal journey, so point being. Where was I going with that? I want to paint butterflies. Which means, here's a fun factoid for you. Did you know that some people do keep butterflies as like actual pets and show them? And you can hold a butterfly and or moth. I did not have this knowledge until yesterday. It literally blew my mind. Okay, I guess not literally. I'd be dead. I wouldn't be talking to you. It figuratively blew my mind. I was in awe and shock. I came inside, and then I had to burst forth to my part. I was like, did you know were you aware? And he's just looking at me like, yeah, no, but it's cool. I'm like, I needed this information. Childhood Shanae is just like, are you serious? Of the pets I would have put my parents through, I feel like butterflies would have been better. I would have stopped asking for the dang chinchilla. I would have stopped. I would have been like, you're right, it's nocturnal. I don't need that. But do you know what I do need? A butterfly that I can hold in my hand so gently and so quietly. Like, I was that kid. I was the give me a book to read, sit me in a corner, and I'm good. I'm going to have a book everywhere. I'm going to have my nose in a book. And quite honestly, I think that it's terrible that you become an adult, and once upon a time as a kid, you were a good kid if you were quiet and sat with your book and didn't make any noise. But then, then plot twist, you grow up and you try to have your book, but now you're an adult and you're supposed to be there and part of the social interaction. And all of a sudden now it's not enough just to have your presence be there to be part of it. No, you need to be actively engaged. You're not allowed to sit there with your book. It's alright. It's my own personal vendetta. Not that I don't like talking to people. I do. But only for so long. And only about so many topics. And when those have been exhausted, I'm done. And I am sorry, my book is more interesting than you wanting to talk about frivolous things that do not matter. You want to talk? Let's talk about something intellectually engaging. That'd be cool. Let's talk about that. Let's not waste our time on drama that doesn't matter. Especially when you're talking to people that's like, you are too old to be acting. And I hate to say that because I never like to say anybody's too old for anything. But I'm sorry, you are too old to be this emotionally immature and talking like you're in high school. Stop it. Find something more interesting to talk about. I promise you, there's so many things in the world. People raise and show butterflies and moths. That is so much cooler than what freaking, I don't know. I'm not good at ad-libbing names, so I'm not even going to try. But then what so-and-so did at the supermarket, because she's, oh my goodness, and you know, that just makes her whatever. I don't care. I don't care. And you know, neither should you. So-and-so's just fine. Leave her alone. Be nice to them or don't. Be their friend or don't. Don't talk about them. Because y'all aren't in high school anymore. Knock it off. Stop it. Stop that. I'll whack you in the nose with a newspaper. Then you're really never going to invite me back to any events. Oh, woe is me. I would be sad to not go to anything. I'd be that sad not to go to things I really don't want to go to. Shanae, you're an adult. You don't have to. Oh, well, you know, it's complicated from there. It gets complicated from there. Also, I've been told on multiple occasions I'm not allowed to just be a hermit that goes and lives in the woods and paints at my easel all day. And to be fair, though at times that is exceptionally tempting, that's my daydream sometimes. But then I think of my partner and I think of my little girl, and I remember that there are good things to be engaged in life. And I think that is an artist trap, that you're like, I could just do my art all the time. And like, you do kind of have to think about it all the time, be in it. Like, there is, I've read that in a lot of things by a lot of different artists, like, and you have to dedicate, you kind of do. I'm sorry. The people that have artists in their lives, I'm like, they never talk about anything that's not art. Well, we're always thinking about it. But I think the trap is to get holed up by yourself, to give into that most inherent artist desire, which is, I must create my craft all the time. Well, you can also run dry that way, and you are supposed to actually experience life, because life will affect your practice, and life is what we should reflect and paint in the first place. Like, yeah, you gotta paint some of that internal world, and I'm super guilty of just letting my mind go with that and being like, but I'm so distraught. But you know what I have actually discovered? And here's a little nugget, and we'll end on this here soon. So I don't know if this is taking too long or not, but something I have discovered is that, yes, you must go within You must face your own internal trials and tribulations. That's important. And sometimes you can go there alone. Well, you can only ever go there alone, but sometimes you can have someone maybe direct you with some help, be there in the physical world for you as you venture inward. But if you get stuck too much, trying to go too far inward, if you get stuck and you're like, it's not making it better, I'm just like always thinking about it and trying to fix this and that and the third, it's very easy to start, I want to say this word, I don't really know this word, making it all a catastrophe. There's a word for that, catastrophizing, I don't know. And I will admit that I don't know. But point being, it's easy to start making everything a catastrophe and start feeling like it's all just imbalance. Not in balance. It's all imbalanced. It's off balance, off kilter. But it's easy to start being like, and everything's terrible, and there's so much, and you just, sometimes you just gotta breathe and go out into the real world and stick your feet in some dirt and interact with your loved ones, whether they are friends or family, whoever it is that makes you have some peace and honest reflection in your life. Come back to the world. Give yourself a break from that sometimes, because you can get caught there. And life's not great there. But the thing is, it's not as bad as you think it is. It just feels that bad for a second. And as I have been telling my daughter, as I have seen in the literature, as I try to teach my toddler about her emotions, feelings change. And you are the only one holding on to them. So you are also the only one who can let them go. And sometimes you just got to do that. But how do I? No, you have to just let them go. That's something I ran into 1,000 times over. I'm like, but there's a special trick in there somehow, because my brain just keeps, no, your brain is just doing what your brain does. Like, it has systems and processes, and some of them are hard to change, and some of them are kind of wedged in there. But like, ultimately too, you just have to decide at some point to be engaged and not make it all a catastrophe. That is as far as we got, and I'm going to stop this video because I'm pretty sure that it is too long already. But this hopefully gives you a good idea of how long this takes, because that's how far we got. And these are little shapes. I got to block in these big shapes, which, yes, I will use a bigger brush, and they are easier in some respects. You don't have to be as careful like with the middle and stuff here, but you still got to get your edges, and there's things that make it take a while. So anyway, I love you, gorgeous people. I hope you have a fantastic day. Go out, be creative, be engaged in life, and I will see you next time. Bye.